Welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. I'm Elizabeth McKeon, a board-certified psychiatric mental health and addiction recovery nurse. This podcast aims to bridge the gap between mental health and substance use discussions, fostering understanding and empathy while reducing stigma. Join us as we amplify the voices of those with lived experiences, creating a non-judgmental space for their stories to be heard. Thank you for tuning in. Did you know that approximately 60% of people with methamphetamine use disorder will have a relapse within the first year of their recovery? Welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. Today I have a lovely Brittany Rockmore, who happens to be working for Healthy Georgia as a certified addiction counselor. And she is also a part of our jail in-reach program in the North Georgia region. And so welcome, Brittany. So glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So we're here to hear your story of basically your testimony of recovery, but also like how the combination of mental health factored in to your substance use disorder. And I'm just going to let you take it from there. Let's go way back.
Okay, so we'll start from the teenage years.
Okay.
In my teenage years, I was very hyperactive, and the school wanted to run some tests on me to test for attention deficit and other things. They tried me on all the medicines, Wellbutrin, Adderall, Ritalin, all the things. It either made me super zonked out and I just had no life in me, or I just was running wide open, couldn't sit down. So my mom was just kind of pleading with these doctors, like, we really can't find a medium with her. Like, she's either super up or super down. I remember my mom and dad would go to like parent conferences, and I would like, instead of doing the test, draw racetracks all around the paper. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And my dad was like, what are we going to do here? So, I did start my drug use at a very young age. I'm
going to stop you right there. What did they keep you on anything like the Adderall or anything? Did you stay on that at all?
No, we just, I got to where I just wouldn't take it. I couldn't find a medium with it. And it just, I was a cheerleader. So I was very active, and I just found myself,
diving into that.
Yeah. And I just couldn't, I just either didn't feel good, or I felt so overstimulated that I couldn't really concentrate on anything. Okay. So, I cheerleaded all my life up into middle school. And that's where really things took a flip for me.
Can I take you back to home life?
Yeah.
Was home life good?
Yeah, it was good. I've got great parents. There was a lot of drug use at the beginning. My dad whooped on my mom.
Okay. So you came from like an abusive household?
Yeah. I can remember it. My mom, when I'll tell my mom these things, she's like, there's just no way that you remember that. And I'm like, well, I just told you, and she's like, that's just crazy that you were 3 or 4 years old and can remember that. My dad,
did they come back from that? Is that what happened?
No, my dad way worse than my mom. My mom, she got pregnant with me out of wedlock, and my grandma was not having it. So she was not welcome. She's from Jacksonville, Florida. So she was not welcome back at my grandma's. And my grandpa drove for Greyhound, so he would sneak up to Atlanta and see her where she moved in with my aunt. Well, she would work at the Sky Valley Country Club where she met my dad and ended up getting pregnant. And pretty much from her getting pregnant with me, she dried up, all the hardcore stuff.
That's
not
good.
to say she didn't use later, but it was partying on the weekends for her. She was more mother, My dad, however, no. He would rock on and just had a good paying job. He's got a college degree, all the things, but could not maintain, crack binges, cocaine binges, all the things. So they separated when I was probably, I would say 10 or 11. And my mom remarried my stepdad, and boy, did me and him not get along.
Okay.
at all. 4 years. He's got cop military background, so, I think my mom got the guilt trip right off the rip with the divorce. So she was kind of doing a lot of making up on whatever we wanted to do. And I was a real wild child. So he would try to put us in line, yes, ma'am, no, and I was like, no, and I won't be having none of that. For example, he has one son, and there was I don't know, we got in an argument. Well, he handcuffed us together and said, you'll stay like this until you say you're sorry. And I said, I bet you my mom won't send me to school like this. So, just very defiant. And I mean, like, you can come out of the corner till you say you're sorry or yes, sir, and I wouldn't do it.
You were going to be in the corner for like
very
a week.
Defiant. Yeah. So along with those, testings I was telling you about, there was a lot of trouble. I'll save you on that, but there's just lots and lots of trouble. I was always in trouble for something. So these medicines just didn't work, and so I stopped. I just stopped taking them really overall, and I was real independent, kind of doing my own thing. And my mom was just real naive. My stepdad was kind of like, how are you going to run all over the place like this? And she was like, oh, it's fine.
And how old are you
14.
right now? 14. Okay.
I have a stepdaughter now, too. So looking back at all this and like looking at her age, it blows me out of the water to think how I was having sex, drugs, all the older
at
boys.
14?
At 14 years old.
Okay.
So I ended up getting in so much trouble, like, I'll try to consolidate it, but the one that tipped it was my third time getting arrested. I was so young they couldn't even put me in the paper. On federal land, we were all drinking. They took like 17 of us in. Well, the juvenile judge was like, we've had it with you. Like, there's just whatever. She made my mom drive me to Warm Springs, where they have one of those outdoor camps for girls.
Yeah.
No. I was like, please don't leave me here. I'll be better. I mean, these girls are like forging their own houses and stuff.
Ooh.
Eating from, using sticks for forks. I was like, oh no, I'm too fancy for this. Anyways, my stepdad just kept trying to help my mom put me in line. And I was like, I don't know, if you don't let me do something like this or that, I'm going to kill myself.
Now, were you using that, I'm going to kill myself, as a manipulative
Absolutely.
action, or you weren't really suicidal?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And looking back, you must be like horrified, because you would be like, there are people that really are suicidal.
I'll give people advice, don't say that if you don't mean it. Because I got down there with some kids that really, really, truly had some problems. And like I said, this was in my transition from being cheerleader, popular, all the things, to, hanging out with older guys that were doing drugs and doing this and that. So that was kind of in my transition.
And then, are you in a small town at this point?
Yeah. So, yeah. I got out of the mental hospital. They did a 72-hour hold on me. Really scary.
And what was the 72-hour hold because of?
Me threatening I was going to kill myself.
Okay, so you got
because I wasn't getting my way.
You got the taste of reality. Then you were probably committed on a
Yeah.
1013.
Very reality eyes opening. Because we are from such a small town that there are kids that are really struggling in this world. For example, there was a guy in there. He didn't speak or talk or do anything. He would hide under the table at groups, and they were kind of telling his story that his family had been feed him heroin to stay knocked out so he wouldn't kind of be in their way. It was awful. My the girl I was in the room with, when I'm saying self-mutilation, I mean chunks out of the tops, out of the sides, out of arms, legs, her neck, her arms, her stomach. There was more, she had more scars on her body than skin. And just the trauma of, what she was telling me she had been through just got awful. And so I took a look and I said, and one of the real sassy girls in there was like, look at you up in here with your highlights and your nails and your Abercrombie shirt. And what are you doing in a place like this? Anyways, very big eye opener that there's teenagers out there that are really struggling, and that I didn't have it so bad that I probably needed an attitude adjustment. But
got it. And are you still like 14, or where are we now?
Yeah,
in age?
that's 14.
Wow.
So that kind of rocked on. I got a 17-year-old boyfriend, about 15. Going back to being very independent, I had a job at a local bar. I was the cook, but not, bartending. But, my mom there was nothing that could be done with me. When I was on probation from 14 to, it rocked on until I was just, violated and maxed out. But so, I got permission to move out there with him at 15. So I was living with him. I went to high school during the day when I went.
Is that your boyfriend?
Mm-hmm. I went to high school when I went, chose to go. And then 16, got my license. I had my own job, went to high school during the day, lived with him. We lived with his mom, so we had like the basement. We didn't really have bills, but I paid for my truck payment, my insurance, all the things. My mom, we are always very close, but it was just got to the point where she was like, okay, hands out. There's just nothing I can do with you. Right before I did move out with her, I tried a stint with my dad, and he didn't, there was no rules there. My mom was kind of like, you're going to have to get a hold on her. Whatever. Well, I crossed 2 state lines on probation. They had to come get me out of Tennessee. And I was transported directly there to another juvenile treatment center. Anyway, so my mom, when I had to move back home with my mom, she's just finally like, there's nothing I could do. I was going to do it either way. And there was just nothing, we had to do therapy in the house. We had to do just all the stuff. So she's like, there's just nothing I can do. And maybe if you think you've got it figured out, you can go on about and see what you can do. So yeah, I moved in with him, turned 16. I would use drugs really heavy on the weekends, and then that just ended up carrying on into the week. I wouldn't go to school. At 17, me and another friend were going to Atlanta buying crack cocaine and meth and bringing it back up here. I was selling it to different various people. So I just kind of got in my head, I've got bigger things going on, and high school is just not where it's at. So, yeah, that rocked on. I took a...
So you went from, like, basically, I'm a popular cheerleader, getting in a little bit of trouble, to full-blown drug trafficking.
Mm-hmm, and you couldn't tell me nothing. Couldn't tell me nothing.
And how often are you using at this point? Is this, like, all day, daily?
I would use, like... meth pretty heavy on the weekends, but I would smoke pot every day. But then it would just drag into, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday turned into Monday and Tuesday to, the halfway point of my senior year. They were like, you just don't have enough credits to graduate. And I was like, there's got to be something we can figure out. They offered me like a ridiculous, come to school, 7A, 7P. We'll let you get a diploma, but you can't walk, all that. And I said, screw all that, and I moved on, just,
Didn't graduate.
And then really let the rough end drag from there. I mean, it's, I moved to, I had a friend that I met in an apartment complex in town, and she was like, oh, do you want to go to Atlanta with me for my birthday? Well, we ended up, we had to make a stop because she had to get her car out of impound, and I was like, I realized what she was doing in the vehicle, and so she got back in. She said, okay, I'm sure you understand what's going on. She was a lady of the night, if you will.
Okay. So
we went down to, a few friends of hers for birthday, piles and piles of drugs, really nice houses. Long story short, it ended up she would pull tricks, and I would sell them. I would sell drugs. So with my connections back in my hometown, and they were like, I'd call, hey, this or that. I got it plentiful, all the drugs you can, at a good price. And I was trafficking drugs back from, Atlanta to
your hometown,
to my hometown. And looking back, all this seems so crazy because it really is amazing that I'm not in prison for the rest of my life.
Right.
Looking at the things, you know.
And are you still 17 at this point? Or are you 18?
I'm about 19.
19.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'll save all the stories so it's not like glorifying it, but just all.
Well, no, let's face it. I think like anybody, and you're not the first person I've heard this from that moves into that lifestyle of you're making money hand over fist, and what that must feel like. And I'm sure in the mindset of using and making money, you're on a different like playing field in your mind, right? And it's like a farce.
I remember going home and like pulling like a wad of money and a rubber band out of my pocket, and because you always want to take care of your mom,
right?
And I'll be like, flipping through 100, and she's like, I don't need that. Like, she would just be there for me where I was at, but like, was crying herself to sleep at night where
Did she know what you were doing, kind of?
yeah. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I would go in there and be like, oh, I done this, I done that, run around with so-and-so. And she's like, oh, no.
Crying.
Yeah. And I was just like, anyway, and I mean, I never, ever slowed down. Like, so at this point, moving into 20, I had enough, a little bit of enough. I was wore out, we'll put it that way. I'd been running the streets and running the roads, and for so long I was like, okay, something's got to give. So I moved back to my hometown. And
I'm going to pause you.
All right.
So in your hometown at this point, is law enforcement or anybody, do they have their eye on you at all, or are you flying under the radar at this point?
So they'd always, I'd always been on their radar because I've been in trouble for so many years. But how I was making it through there, I don't know. And I always looked a mess. So, I don't know how. It really is truly amazing, like, the things. I mean, you'll hear on into my story how much trouble I eventually got in and things, but it really is truly amazing that I'm not on trafficking methamphetamine. I mean,
Right.
Pounds and pounds and pounds of pot, just all the drugs. With the trunk not closing, like, there would have been no hiding it. It's not kind of like, can we look in your vehicle and see if we can find some drugs? It just would have been a matter of popping the trunk, and I would have been done for.
Gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So, I kind of dry. I mean,
So you're tired, you said. At this
and
point a little bit.
the things that a small town country girl went to this city and seen is
Unreal.
yeah.
Well, Atlanta is certainly its own beast.
It truly is. And so the things that, like, I didn't even know went on, I ended up getting robbed in Fulton County, off Fulton Industrial, trying to wheel and deal some drugs, and ended up getting, and, I was always like, I wish somebody would rob me, and then I got robbed with a gun. And it was
it happened
for everything that I had, yeah. And so it was just, and the things that I seen.
Were you in trouble at that point for losing that money or losing what
so
you had?
I had thousands of dollars of mine in one pocket and thousands of dollars of the other girls that was with a guy at the Marriott in town. And so she was sending me back and forth to get, what he wanted. And so I went down there, and she always told me, kind of like showing me some of the ropes, you don't ever leave this gas station. Don't ever leave it. So I pulled up at the same gas station like I have several times, and they were like, oh, go over here to the motel. And I did, and
That's
yep.
so you didn't take the advice.
I end up finding like one of those throwaway phones in the floorboard. Anyways, I called the hotel, call her, and I'm like, oh my God, you're not gonna believe what happened. She's like, just get here. So I got her in the car, and she's like, I cannot believe you let this happen. And so anyways, we did call the cops down there, and they're like, I mean, this is crazy for even doing this. What are you even doing on this exit? Because I tried to lie and say I pulled off to get gas, and clearly I didn't even look the part. Anyways, they found the guy, but like where the thug runs through me, like I couldn't really point him out. Like they'd found him, but I didn't really point him out because you just don't do that.
So yeah, so you were not being a rat, so to speak.
I had to hear her all the way back home because I didn't,
So you lost drugs and the money, or
yeah, it was almost about $10,000, and
people get killed for that.
oh yeah, I when I'm saying a walk of miracle, like I just insanity, the things that I've lived to tell about it. But anyways, after that Atlanta stint was over, I moved back home, and I had a little boyfriend in middle school, and I ended up meeting up with him, and never kind of left. I would have
Stayed in
said,
your small town.
Yeah, I would have said one time the love of my life, kind of thing. We were really close. We did everything together. We were just alike. I would say a lot of my trauma comes from him, but moved back to just one town over from mine. And we got married when I was about 21. I ended up getting pregnant, and I said, okay, I've done got sobered up. This is going to, this will fix me. We're going to be a family. I'm doing the right thing, no drugs, da-da-da. Ended up miscarrying, and I was like, just thought it was the end of the world.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So, moving on from that, ended up pregnant again about 9 months later, and I was like, oh, that same thing couldn't happen again. And Go down there to the doctor, and they do an ultrasound, and I'm having a tubal, and it's a
ectopic pregnancy.
Yep. And so,
just FYI, sister, I have also experienced an ectopic pregnancy. I almost died, so I know that is very traumatic.
Yeah, like it was a viable pregnancy. It was just in the tube, so they ended up having to take that.
Did they take your whole tube out? Because they did mine too.
Yep, the whole tube. So his dad ended up getting sick. His dad is his best friend, mentor, all the things. He ended up getting sick, brain tumors, and the whole family and everything kind of go downhill from there. My ex-husband, he really bared down on the drugs, and when I mean really bared down, just the god awful things he got out on pills and just alcohol and the meth and anything he could get his hands on. And so I was still at a point where I was just kind of smoking pot at the time, so I was just like, this isn't working. Anyways, months of that rocked on, and I finally decided to move back to my hometown. Got another little job, got me and my sister, we got a little place, and I was like...
Now, did you divorce him?
No, I just left him. But like 3 days after moving into this new place, I had a feeling. So I took another pregnancy test, and I called my mom. I'm like, what is the worst thing that could happen right now? And she's like, if you say you're pregnant. I was like, well, I am. So going through the doctors.
So you're a miracle. That's a miracle, by the way, because you have one viable tube.
Yeah. So end up going to like a specialist because she's like, you're high risk at this point. My HCG wasn't going up, and she's just like, it's not a viable pregnancy. Well, I was kind of involved with my ex-husband at this time. Well, he's like, you need to, they're big Christians under all his drug use, but he's like, we're going to pray, and this is going to happen. Like, this is probably a sign. We're supposed to be back together, all the things. And I was like, whatever. So I tried and tried and tried. Well, like 2 months into me trying, the doctor's like, this is just not a viable pregnancy. Like, I know this is not what you want to hear, but it's just not a viable pregnancy. Your things aren't going up. Like, it's just not. I don't know if it's the stress or what, but this just won't work. Your best route is to do like a form of chemotherapy to kill the pregnancy out. That way it wouldn't scar my other, my last remaining tube, so I could eventually have other kids. So I take that shot, and we're doing like a follow-up, and she comes in and she's like, oh, your HCG doubled for some reason. And yeah, like I can't really, I know you've been through it, so you understand, but like the weight of that, and my husband's like, I told you, you're a killer, all the things. It was awful.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So, we just couldn't I couldn't stay away. We couldn't stay away from each other, but it just was completely toxic.
It's toxic, yeah.
Terrible. So,
and I can only imagine you're taking the advice of a doctor, and the doctor was wrong.
So I have to do another round. Yeah, it was just awful. It really was. And I just, at that point I left him, so I kind of got back into the drug scene full swing. I was working at a bar, ended up running around, and seeing a drug dealer. So there was a plethora of all the things. A few months rocked on, and, I was going to Tennessee, ended up on the Parkway and got a federal DUI and a federal drug charge.
Ouch.
Yeah. So, ended up going to court on that. It was just some probation, other things. It was my first one, so it wasn't a big deal. I don't think even 6 months later, another DUI in my hometown. Wrecked my car. This girl come around the corner while she didn't go around. Regardless, nothing was ever my fault. I had a hard time taking blame for what was mine and owning it. So, no car. Now I couldn't hold a job. Getting really down on my luck. Now we're back on probation. I go from the drug dealer guy to another guy. He's just not really working. We're just running around doing meth all night. All the drugs possible, pills, all the things. Like I said, I couldn't hold a job.
What was your go-to drug at this point?
Meth.
Meth?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would do meth every day, all day, and drink alcohol all day, every day, but I'll partake in whatever.
Whatever.
Other thing. Mm-hmm. So, Essentially, I could not do probation. Could not. Kept going in, failing drug screens. So they let me do.
Now, are you in the drug court system at this point,
No.
or is this just typical probation type stuff?
Yeah, I couldn't do probation, so we went back to court and did a modification, and they added 12 months to it, so I could go to a 12-month program. I think that lasted 3 weeks. Got kicked out.
Now, how do you get kicked out of a program like that? For what?
Long story short, I was passing a note for a girl, and they made her jump in the dumpster and told her she couldn't get out until she come out with that note. I had ripped mine up and threw it away. And to be honest, this one was so strict that it was really just that I was getting something from the office and said, they are going to let you have your pass because your grandpa died, but they were talking about drug testing you as soon as you get back. So just make sure you stay strong, don't use, and it'll all work out.
Okay. So you were
That is really all the notes.
You were being a support.
The staff didn't know that, and they wanted to see what was on the note. However, there's absolutely no passing notes. So not to mention, I had done got in trouble for, I'm not sure what, but they put a sign on me and it said, I'm on talk restriction. Do not talk to me or you will be put on talk restriction.
Okay.
So I was already like, and a few of the girls
That
were
seems like a little excessive.
they said, these ladies aren't fooling around. You will get kicked out of here. So anyways, on the passing the note, and anyways, the note back from her just said, thanks so much. This is a really hard time. Thanks for being there. Because she was a lesbian and that rehab was very, very Christian and it was not accepted. They'll take you as a lesbian, but they were in firm belief that they can pray the lesbian out of you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's harsh.
So on a collective of this, I ripped up the note, flushed mine. They made her get in the dumpster to find it. Anyways, I was in Bible study praying, and the deputy tapped me on the shoulder, and she was like, you stand up, you're under arrest. And I was like, in Bible study? She said, yes. So when I got back to the jail, they were like, all right, we're done. We tried treatment. She's had violations. We're done. We're going to pull her time. Well, that year that they added so I could do that 12-month program, they pulled all of that, which was 519 days that I sat in the county jail.
Ouch.
I ended up getting detail and getting 2 for 1, but it leveled out at 333 days. So almost right at a year was I in the county jail for a misdemeanor DUI.
Wow. So now I'm going to stop you right there. Do you think, looking back, that was a good thing overall for you as that being a part of your recovery, or did you take that and roll with it to use more?
So I got out and went right back into the guy that I was seeing right before I got locked up. He's no good news. So I remember going in the jail, leaving the jail, going to pee in a bottle so I could save my last bit of clean pee that I was going to have.
Okay, so I'm going to say you use jail as a plan for your future to go and use and be able to pee clean.
At this point, I was looking at rehabs like, that's a joke. How could that happen? Like, why are they doing people like that?
Your experience was
awful.
Awful, and we won't use names of what recovery that was, but I really don't care how people get clean, to be honest with you, whether that's through Christian recovery, forensic recovery, whatever your path is to get clean and get recovered, right? But what happened to you was abusive. And
when
I'm
you
just
say
going to state
Christian
that.
recovery, because my husband, which is still the same, my first husband, and the boyfriend both wrote a letter. She said she was going to swap letters and mail them back. I was like, you can't do that. It's federal crime, She said, oh, I can and I will. And you also probably need to douche with holy water to give your body back to God.
Oh, no.
I can't even grasp some of these things. So when you say Christian recovery, some of that's over the top.
Well, I guess when I say that, there are programs out there like Celebrate Recovery. So,
It's an awesome program.
Yeah, it is. And it's Christian-based. However, there are programs that use Christ in their forefront as a means to be abusive. And that's just not okay. And I'm sorry you went through that. That's just awful.
So I got out of jail. I was back to being a functioning addict. I had a job. I'd work during the day. Back to using meth, alcohol, pot, pills 24/7. Got to the point to where I couldn't hold a job. I had a really great boss. He was like, I like you a lot. He's like, but this is no hard feelings, but this is business. I was like, I get it. So back on the downhill slope. I ended up getting my license back in that little bit of time because you'll lose them when you get a DUI. I got my license back. I don't even think, probably 6 months later, another DUI. And this was a methamphetamine DUI.
Oh.
So, it's just so funny that, and I'm not going to say what's crooked, what's not. I deserved everything, every bit of trouble that I ever got. But when the toxicology come back, it was just funny that it was just methamphetamine in my system, considering I do a plethora of drugs.
Right. So that was the one that came back, and you were like, score, basically.
So took my license again, really on a downhill slope again. So my probation officer's like, she was doing all she could. But the insanity of this is that she tried with me, and she would be like, okay, well, you're going to call me in the mornings, and I'm going to see if you need to take a drug test that day. And you can't be down there at that boyfriend's house. You need to be at your mom's. And she had all these parameters on it. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I have figured out that, I could drink. I could take like a little bit of drink and put like 3 tablespoons of baking soda in it, shake it up, get that down, and then chug it with a gallon of water. And I could go, give me an hour, and I'll come in there and pass that drug test. So, yeah. So she would call, and I would have to go down there, but I could walk in and I mean, it.
For our listeners, we are not proposing that this is how you should pass a drug test, by the way.
Never
Just
do that.
Never do that. Thank you.
It's enough sodium to bust your heart, essentially.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So, hey, but whatever it takes. Got to keep on.
Got it.
I would be smoking dope at 5 o'clock in the morning and have to call her at 7. So, anyways, I thought I'd figured it out, though. So, she ended up having enough of me, and she's like, nope. So, I walked in one day. I wouldn't say she tricked me, but she was like, just come in here, I need you to sign this paper. And she had the deputies come in right behind me. Because I was thinking if I can, like, make it out to the left and to the right, I can hit that side door and be out by the clerk's office. So, I kind of stood up and was moving close to the door, and they were already coming up behind me, so I didn't have a chance. But that just shows you where your sick thinking goes, like that you was going to bolt out of the courthouse and somehow make it. So, anyways, handcuffed me, took me to jail. They pulled my probation at that point. So I was like, God, this is just crazy. Like, I just want to use drugs like other normal people. I just want to have fun, blah, blah, blah.
And how old are we?
23.
23, okay.
I sat in jail long enough.
You've been at it for almost 10 years at this point.
Yes. Sat in there long enough to where I'm like, this is crazy. People are talking about the drug court program. I didn't even qualify for the drug court program because I only have misdemeanors. It's crazy you can be in so much trouble, but to not qualify to get, I didn't have a felony. So I was like, okay, let me try this rehab thing again. People do seem to be making it out sober, living a good life, whatever. Let me try it again. So, not mention any names. There's an awesome program in middle of Georgia.
Yep.
Went down there. The judge sentenced me to 6 months. Very good. They're changing lives down there. Those ladies doing that work are really changing lives.
I'm real proud to say that I am working with that program actively in education and training, and their program for their recovery center there is fantastic. And
Yes.
I'm really glad that you were able to go there because they are fantastic folks.
So learning what I learned at the other rehab, I knew that the rules meant business, and no fooling around. But the justice system wasn't fooling around with me. And I've kind of skipped over like a few small arrests, but just know that couldn't.
You're cracking me up. I've skipped over a few small arrests.
Just a few small. When you print out my record, because now that I'm doing drug and alcohol counseling, you have to get certified to do a background, and it prints out in like 27 pages, and you're just looking through it, and you're like,
wow.
It's awful. But, so I made it down there to that program. I knew that the rules meant business, and I really did have in my head, okay, I'm going to give this an honest try. If it don't work, it don't work, but I'm going to give it my an honest try. About 5 months and 3 weeks in, they were doing a little search or something, doing something with the girls, and one of the counselors, because it's not a 6-month program, it's 12 months. Don't leave before the miracle happens.
Right.
You don't say when you're ready. It's not a time limit thing. So she was just kind of like, they were going off on a few people, pointing, and she said, are you still leaving at 6 months? And I said, yes, that's all the judge ordered. She said, then you need to go pack your stuff and you need to head on out. Well, I was terrified because probation, I was like, I don't know, 5-7 days shy of 6 months, but still, I was terrified that they were going to, because I still have all this other probation. I mean, one of the terms was completion of the rehab.
Right.
But I still had several years of probation left. So anyways, I was just super scared. Come back, moved in with my mom. I could really put on good. I could manipulate and I could lie and it was just, and I'm ashamed to say a lot of that, but I really could just fool you blind.
Right.
Especially my poor mom.
Yeah.
And so she would just be bragging on me. And anyway, so I think
I say this in every podcast, so I would be breaking my percentage rate, not to state this, but for those who haven't heard this before, one of the biggest factors in substance use disorder of any kind is changed brain. And the mesolimbic system in the brain is also the decision-making tool in the brain. And during drug and alcohol use, that part of the brain is actually turned off or turned down. In Brittany's case, it was probably turned off. This is why people who are in active substance use disorder or even newly clean will have lapse in judgment. They will lie, they will steal, they will cheat. They will do all of those things because of that changed brain. So just wanted you to know that.
Love statistics.
So you are actively lying to mom.
Okay, yeah. Bless her heart. Okay, so
you got mom fooled.
My whole life, like in my amends, she was the very first one. And I can't say a million sorries. But I'm talking about from the adolescent just being a terrible kid to, my stepdad and my mom almost divorced because I was becoming such a problem in the house that he's just like, I cannot anymore. And she's like, it's what do I do? And I didn't give a damn.
Right.
It was awful. Looking back, like awful.
Yeah.
Anyway, so a million sorries is never enough to her, like the things that I put her through. And she always had my back. Each one of these, several times to rehab, she would go buy me all brand new stuff, all brand new bed and all clothes, all everything. When they took me when I went to Middle Georgia, they took me, they thought it was going to be like a week later, but they ended up taking me sooner. Well, she was at my aunt's, like kind of in West Georgia. She left there, went to Walmart, bought me all new stuff again, and then drove all the way to Middle Georgia to bring me those things. Anyways, and my sister's really been there through it, come and see me in jail, always cut money on my books, always been my support, they were just meeting me where I was at and like encouraging me to do better, but never give up on me. So,
So you've just gotten out of Middle Georgia. You're telling me, I'm thinking you're telling me.
And I've got it figured out now.
You've got it figured out.
I've got it figured out. So here's how I had it figured out. So I had it figured out, and so just was going out with friends and smoking some pot, because that's completely harmless. And no, well, then I just started drinking because that's legal.
Right.
But when I'm telling you what I've learned on through my whole journey is when people say you cannot do alcohol, you cannot go back from going to the hard stuff to just drinking alcohol, because alcohol will literally put your brain in a loose state. So when I'm telling you, I could go from before I left the house to I have this figured out, I know where my limits are, to having a drink and being like, half a gram won't hurt.
I have a family member who's in recovery from alcohol use disorder, and that person has told me many times that anyone who drinks to excess or drinks the opinion of this person is that if you drink at all, you are at risk for
running out,
doing bad things. So, I always take that into consideration, that everybody needs to put themselves in check.
It's really what took me out every time. All these times I thought I had it figured out, and I was like, we'll just have a drink, I could get a little sip of liquor in me and be like, half a gram won't hurt. Or
change brain.
Yeah. So that turned into snowball effect. I I ended up getting, so a friend of mine in town, his house got raided and he got locked up. So his house was vacant. So I said, place to live. This would be great. And pretty much picked up where he left off. Awful idea. Not only were they already watching his house and had already, I think, I'm not even sure, maybe, I keep saying 6 months and I see the pattern here. So probably 6 months in, I was doing so good anyways in my appearance and all that they let me off early probation because of how proud they were of me. And I was doing so good, and look at her moving back to her hometown and staying clean. And they let me off probation, and I was just thrilled because now I don't even have to report to nobody. Well, later, now that I'm friends with some of the sheriff's department, they told me what an extensive surveillance operation it was, but I had surveillance cameras all over my house.
Oh my goodness.
So when I watched back the video, they'd like blocked off the road and like come in CERT team style, kick the door off the hinge. They really didn't find much. Back to nothing ever being my fault. No accountability. But, it was just a little bit of drugs, some pipes, bongs, scales. They took all the cameras. They had like a .22 rifle, a few different things. And he was like, well, you want to help yourself out of this, And I was like, I've been here before. Well, I'm like handcuffed looking over in the box. And I said, is this where people fall off and go to town on all their people because of a rifle and a half a gram there you got? I said, no, I'm good. So he said, well, I'm going to give you some time to think about it, and we're going to revisit this. I honestly feel like they left because they really was. I mean, I guess they could have took me on the possession charge. Half a gram, an empty bag's enough to go to jail on.
Yeah.
Either way, they left. There was a time before they kicked in my door that they'd come over with a few 8x10 pictures, and they'd had a camera on the power pole out here that they got permission from somebody's property to put on to face my house. One of the guys is one of the guys you did a podcast with.
Okay.
Anyways, and yeah, so I ended up getting divorced from my first husband, got out of prison. He kind of made slick remarks, kind of like, "Are we going to work this out?" No, we're not. This is 10 years no. So,
So are you 24, 25 at this point?
I'd say 24.
Okay.
So, I had a factory job in my hometown, and reunited with a guy that I've known my whole life, another one of my good friends. And he was trying to like kind of be a boyfriend, girlfriend, but I was just too wide open for any, and I'm not really a commitment kind of person. So time rocked on. My house got raided, and this friend of mine, my guy friend, he said, why don't you come up and stay with me to kind of get out of all that and give it some time to cool down. I was like, that sounds good. So ended up, I guess, because I wouldn't work with the sheriff's department on snitching, if you will, whatever it is. My friend just got pulled over for a simple tag light, and they were like, oh, well, you got a warrant. And I was like, what? And they were like, it's possession of methamphetamine. But now I'd made it up to my whole life with even the things I just mentioned to you without a methamphetamine charge. And I feel like there's nothing uglier you could have under your name. What's my mom going to think? Now my cover's blown, which it had been blown.
Right.
People can see you. So, tried to stay out of the scene. Then COVID come along. All right, so now we're all getting unemployment and we're, living it up. Well, me and the same guy friend that I was staying with got in a terrible accident. And I wasn't really hurt, but it hit on his side. He was in drug court at the time. It hit on his side. He had a broken femur, broken pelvis, broken all the things.
FYI, you can die real quick from a broken femur and pelvis. Just saying.
He was really badly hurt. Well, he was on drug court, so they put him on what's called a medical freeze. And I like to watch other people's stories and play into mine, just like everything addiction. When they say one prescription can take you out,
oh yeah,
that is literally all it takes is one prescription. Yep. So they put him on a medical freeze, and he got a prescription for, 30, Roxy 15s.
Oh.
Right in the middle of him trying to get clean. I think he only had about 9 months. And
can I ask what he was trying to get clean from?
Meth.
Okay.
Pills.
Was he doing opioids, though, also?
Mm-hmm.
And so now he has a prescription.
In our small town, I mean, you would have to go, you'd have to drive to get some heroin, but it really wasn't prevalent like it is nowadays.
Yeah, that's
so you, I mean, the Roxy thing was big at the time.
Yeah,
so,
pills, for sure. Yeah.
So, anyways, put him on a medical freeze. Well, enough time had dropped on, they're like, all right, you're going to have to get back in the program. So, at this time I'm staying with him, I would still feel like I wasn't bad off because like he would tell me, oh, I see you got your sack and your pipe and you're not like, like actively using because I was saving it for work in the morning, so I had it in my head, but when you work 12, 16 hours, I had it in my head, you couldn't work that factory job without meth. That's why, that's why
how I roll.
That's how I roll. And to work a 12, 13 hour shift, you're going to have to, anyways. So, it didn't really bother him. Like, I would just go, like, downstairs and use the drugs. And, anyways, he ended up, having to, because he failed his drug test after they gave him a week to get clean. Failed his drug test, and then they let him back out of jail, and he started back on his drug court program. Well, we're living together, like I said, at this time, and we're working at the same place, so we would, work the same shift, go home. My addiction got so sideways that, of course, I wasn't sleeping, and living with him and his daughter, and they've got a normal sleeping hour schedule, and, I'd be out painting the porch or just God knows what at ridiculous hours. And then that drinking turns me into a god-awful monster. So he got to a point where he was like, this has kind of gone too far. Like, your addiction you weren't as spun out as you are getting to now when you moved in. Like, I really think you probably need to find somewhere else to go. Moved in with a friend. That was no help.
Now, were you, I don't know how to say this, I guess I'll just say it. Like, were you in love with this guy? Had he become that for you at the time?
He would let me, I wouldn't say use him up. But he'd pay all the bills. He paid the rent. He paid all the things.
Got it.
Yeah. So, I really didn't have to pay for nothing. I could essentially run him over because whatever I said went, and he went along with that.
Got it.
So, if I would be like, well, I'm leaving at 11:30 at night, he'd be like, okay, see when you get back, So, we ended up working it out. I ended up moving back in with him, and then he graduated drug court. And so now my little trips to the bathroom become him knocking on the door and let me hit that. And so now we're using together. Because what are you going to say? No?
Right.
And you've been doing so good. Why would you want to do this?
Right.
So we ended up using again. And he got a really good lawyer for the wreck. And I would say a year later, I think it was $250,000.
Okay.
And oh boy. I mean, 8,000 pills at a time he was buying. We went to Vegas. We lived it up. Had a nice house in a nice neighborhood. Bought brand new car, brand new everything. Living it up. Had the money to do because people can't afford, it got to where you can't afford $50, $60 for one pill.
Right.
But when you can afford to go buy 5,000 or 6,000.
Right.
And so that was the beginning to the end.
I want to state that please do not substitute this podcast for professional therapy or treatment. The content shared here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do ask our listeners to respect the diverse experiences of individuals and refrain from passing judgment. If you or someone you know needs professional help, please seek the guidance of a registered and qualified mental health professional. Clearly Well is brought to you by Healthy Georgia and produced by CNC Media.